All right, good morning. Okay, so journalists, is there any journalists in the room? We have a headline for you today. American angel investor visits Australia and reveals secret plan of how your startup can invade America. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a case study with a portfolio company of mine about how you can invade America. Why? Because it's a huge market, and you know that, of course. But we're going to talk about that for a few minutes today. And I wanted to, well, let me back up. How many of you took a long flight to get here today? Only one of you? Come on. You're not awake yet, right? Right. It was about 25 hours for me. I'm from Southern California. As I was flying through, connecting my second leg or third leg, I connected through San Francisco. And it reminded me, back in 1994, I was a graduate student at Stanford University. And this was the early days of the internet. And I distinctly remember still, after decades, the first time I connected through, we used to use these tools. This is the pre-graphic internet, right? All text-based. There used to be a tool called Telnet, which is, I guess, stands for telephone network, because we literally used dial-up modems. You were lucky if you had 14.4 modem. That was fast. But I connected through on a text basis to a library in Africa. This was mind-blowing. Now, today, that's commonplace, right? And there's probably some of you here from Africa, right? I mean, these days, no big deal. But that was mind-blowing for me. And it changed my life, because I showed it to some of my friends and even my parents, and they're all kind of like, okay, so? But I could see the potential, and that's why I'm here today, the potential for all of you, all of us, to participate in the internet revolution that I could see was coming. We were about to unleash connectivity among billions of people, especially people who'd never really been included in the mainstream economy before. And that, to me, was exciting. The contributions of the diverse community, the different perspectives that everyone could bring online, I mean, I couldn't even imagine where it was going to go. And obviously, it worked out pretty well. Here we are decades later, still talking about it, and it's working, right? And you're all here today, and I'm here today to talk about how we can increase that connectivity even more. There are still opportunities, obviously. The internet's not new anymore, but it's a green field in many parts of the world, and that's really why I came all the way to Australia today, to help encourage more of you to get on the freeway and drive over to the United States and see how we could help each other. I see it as a win-win for the future of all of us. Creativity, jobs, tax base goes up, take people out of poverty, cleaner water, better schools, better restaurants, all those things that all of us really want, especially our governments, who are finally waking up to the fact that innovation economy can really lift people out of poverty and change the world. And I've seen this miracle personally. Like I said, I was at Stanford in the 90s, and then I saw it happen, and I certainly saw it happen there. When I started at Stanford, we used to call it Shallow Alto, because it was a sleepy little college town, and it was a boring little place. And 5 years later, 10, 20 years later, in many ways, it's the center of the world. And I saw that movie play again in New York City. I saw it again in Los Angeles on the west side where I lived. And now I live in Orange County, California, which is between LA and San Diego. And I've done a lot in the community there to try to excite the ecosystem and get things moving even farther and faster. So that's why I'm here today, to share that with you guys, this kind of excitement. I've really positioned myself, I guess, as an ambassador for innovation. And that's why I came here. And I hope that we're going to have a discussion today about innovation and how you can participate, bring your company or your country online with the rest of us. And I'm going to have my friend Kim up here in a few minutes. But I wanted to run through a few slides first to sort of set the stage for what we're doing. So today we've got about an hour together, 56 minutes I'm told so far. I'm going to do a quick overview of some market entry opportunities, probably stuff you know, but just to set the table. Then we're going to have a fireside chat with my friend Kim, who's lurking in the back of the room, but you'll see him in a minute. Great guy, who's a serial entrepreneur himself. And then I really want to do some audience Q&A, because I hate panels that run for like 59 minutes and allow 30 seconds for questions. When you guys came all this way, we know that you probably know as much as we do, many of you, and would love to have an interactive dialogue. Okay, so this is me. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Scott. I'm a serial internet entrepreneur and all these other things you can see up there. I've been at this for decades, which is why I'm here today. I guess to call out a few things, I've written 3 books about entrepreneurship. Those are in many languages around the world. Maybe some of you have read them. All trying to get people who were not included in the internet economy early on online. I've spent a lot of my time these days. I've done well enough I can kind of spend my time how I want. And my mission is to help people who maybe didn't go to Stanford get online, right? And participate in the opportunities that all of us are seeing. So that's what those books are about. And I do a lot of speaking. speaking. That second picture, that's me with a delegation from China, from Guangxi, a room full of professors who are trying to figure out how to innovate in their province back in China. And that's me in Turkey, in Istanbul, keynoting a digital economy conference over there. So I am into speaking like this. If you have conferences you're organizing, call me. I'm happy to come, love to travel. And I really spend most of my time organizing communities and getting people excited about the things that have changed my life and I think are going to change yours as well. So these days, I channel most of that into an organization. As an entrepreneur, I saw a lot of holes in the market, services that weren't being delivered. I'm both a founder, and these days I'm mostly an investor, actually. I'm a very active angel investor with groups like Tech Coast Angels. I run Stanford Angels for the region where I live. I work with TIE, which is the Indian Entrepreneurs Worldwide Entrepreneur Group. I'm an LP in a bunch of funds and stuff. So but as an entrepreneur, I saw things that weren't happening. So there's a QR code if you want to go right now. But this is a free community service group, and we just have several different websites and services that plug holes for things that other people aren't doing. And these are all done for free or at cost. And so far, we have 6 free email newsletters. You can go and check it out or talk to me later. I actually there's business cards over here if you want to grab them that will, sometimes it's good to have a physical takeaway. And we have meetups in 40 cities around the world, so if you'd like to collaborate on a meetup in your city, let me know. And building a network of people who are excited about this stuff, who want to be inclusive and build a better future together. Okay, enough about me. So, mastering US markets. So why is this topic important? Well, here's just a quick run through. Maybe you know some of this stuff. But I'm most excited about the opportunities for increasing access. Right? Capital is generally an insider's game, and I'm a person, we don't need to go into my life story any more than we already have, but I was not an insider. I happened to be born white and male at a good time and happened to work my way up to Stanford University, but I was very much not an insider from inner city Detroit, is shorthand, and either you who are Americans might understand what that means. But I spent a lot of my time now trying to bring outsiders in, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and why I think you entering the US markets is a great opportunity. So quick numbers. Fundraising is hard, especially this year. You guys can read, right? But deal volume way down. Valuations collapsing. Like, how are you going to survive in this market? And even in your home market, much less transition to the United States. Diversity is also terrible. This is an old slide from 2017, but I didn't need to look any harder because you can see, you probably can't read all this, but this shows the top companies in the United States. Extremely successful, a whole page full of unicorns. And what every one of those little bar graphs shows you is that it's mostly white guys who are doing the jobs. No surprise, that's the standard thing, but I think we can do better than that. So why even try to enter the US market, especially if you don't look like me and you didn't go to Stanford? Well, you probably know this, but US markets are huge. I ran across this on LinkedIn a month or so ago. If you take China out of this equation, you can see the US market, and I'm an American, I didn't even realize how big we were. Like, our market is freaking huge. So if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, New York, that kind of thing. And so it's worth a shot. And we're going to talk about the difficulties. Believe me, when Kim comes up, we'll talk about that. And it's not easy or fair, but that's where the money is, right? If you really want to grow, if you want to attract venture capital, we've got it. We kind of invented it in the States, right? And this graph, probably can't read it too well, but the tall blue line, not surprisingly, is American venture capital investment as compared to EU or Asia Pacific. But it can happen. So there are foreign unicorns. A lot of companies come from outside the States, and they do make it. And I'll bet how many of you, like you're probably all reading this, looking for your country. Any of you see that your country has a unicorn that's big in the States that isn't on there? Raise your hand. Just tell me, shout it out. Like who?
Canva.
Yeah, right, Canva, right. Good, that's a good one. Obviously here in Australia, yeah. Right. Zero. Where are they from? New Zealand. Okay, great. That's a good one. Yeah, you said one too. I saw a hand. Canva as well. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, that's a unicorn as well? Yeah, that's great. There's so many now. So I cheated on this one. This is ChatGPT. I just typed in ChatGPT. Like, how many foreign unicorns are in the US? So you guys I'm crowdsourcing, so thank you. But that's the point, right? You can make it there. And in fact, 55% of America's unicorns are founded by immigrants. That's a really good number, I think. I mean, for a country that's as parochial as we are, and most of us don't speak another language, most of us don't even own a passport, right? So to have 55% founded by immigrants shows you that there really is an opportunity for all of you here if you're interested in coming to the States. And you can read the rest of it as well if you go widen the lens a little bit. Immigrants' children, or at least an immigrant in a senior executive role, very high numbers. So what's preventing people from coming to the States? Founders, I mean. Well, I put up a little poll on LinkedIn. I'm like, well, let's what do people think? I mean, I have my own opinions, obviously. So I put up this little poll, and these are not scientific, and LinkedIn only allows you 4 choices. it's kind of clunky, but anyway, the biggest problem was raising money in the U.S. That resonate with most of you? Is it scary to raise money in the States? I mean, it's hard even when you're American, right? But of course, it's even harder when you're outside of the States. So then I turned around and I asked all my investor friends, why aren't we investing overseas? And what was interesting to me is that, of course, you might just not be interested, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was more that, can you guys read this in the back? It says too risky? Yeah, too risky, unfamiliar, or too complex. 75%, 73%, it was just about complexity and difficulty. And you know what? That's what we as entrepreneurs can solve, right? Those are things that are solvable. That's not like, crossing the ocean and discovering a new continent. This is like, okay, digitizing paperwork, which we're actually pretty good at these days, all of us. So I think these are things that we can get over, and that's why I'm here, to see if we can accelerate that conversation. So, okay, that's probably it. Wow, that's a blinding. Okay, anyway, so we thought this would be a good idea. It doesn't look like it's a good idea when it's that big. But anyway, these are QR codes for some of our different websites if you want to check it out. But like I said, there's cards over there. Okay, so now we're going to do a fireside chat with my friend Kim. And Kim's going to come on up. Let's see here. What else we got? That's me. Okay, there he is. Okay, good-looking fella in the back there. Come on up, Kim. So Kim is a founder, and he's based near Brisbane, here in Australia. And we're going to tell the story, which is why Jen asked me to come and talk about this, because it's kind of a unique story. Let's give Kim a hand. There he is. Yeah. Even though he's, go ahead, sit down, Kim. Even though he's from Australia, it took him, his flight was delayed 8 hours yesterday, so it took him almost as long to get here as it took me.
Could have flown to the US.
Yeah, right. Or I was joking, he could have walked here. Okay, so this is interesting, I think, and I apologize up front. I don't think it's proper these days to have panels full of white middle-aged guys, right? But this is a personal story, and we kicked it around like how best to do this, and we are the principal players in this story. So I guess what we're showing today is you don't have to look like us, and next time hopefully we'll have some brown or female or other founders up here as well, right, telling their story. But in this case, the white guys are ahead. It's no surprise. So we're going to tell the story a little bit about how I met Kim, and I'm an investor in his company. And they have moved into the United States. So this is a case study that hopefully you all can learn from that demonstrates what we're hoping to create in terms of a virtuous cycle, right? A non-US company attracts US investors, enters the US, makes some money, and then eventually repatriates a lot of the capital and the expertise back to the home country, and then you repeat. That's our goal today, okay? So let me just see if I missed anything. I'm chatting away here. And then we're gonna talk through this together. Oh, I forgot to ask if any of you have a moment and you want to take photos. That would be really helpful. I'm trying to redesign my website, and it's hard to get pictures of yourself speaking. So if any of you have that, or you want to tag us on LinkedIn, tag me on LinkedIn, that would be super helpful. I'm happy to connect with any of you. And yeah, I think we're good here. Okay. Okay, so Kim is a serial entrepreneur, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit, but he's done this several times, starting companies across borders, and we're going to tell the story a little bit about how we got acquainted. So Kim, thanks for being here, and why don't you just introduce yourself, do the quick bio, and then we'll get into discussion.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. I'm Kim Hansen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cake Equity, and basically Cake exists to accelerate startup team motivation through equity ownership. And basically what that means is, as some of you might have experienced when you're touching equity, the contracts, the legal mumbo-jumbo, all of these things, it's extremely painful to use equity to grow your business. It's all the big contracts, nobody understands all of this. This needs to be a lot simpler so that all the startup founders and their teams can focus on solving the problems that their mission is aligned. So Cake has built an online application that makes this ultra simple. So basically, one-click global equity, and these things of, for example, giving ownership to your team to really motivate them and drive your business, this gets 10 times harder when you do it at a global level. And we need that diversity in the team teams to create a really, I think, better future for all of us. So we exist to empower all these startup teams. We believe, a motivated team aligned around a mission is an unstoppable force for good. And we need to see more than Silicon Valley. We need to see it from all the corners of the world. So it's really about connecting. There's amazing learnings from the US that we'll talk about that can be spread to the world, but we need to unleash all the ideas and creativity that people have all around the corners of the world.
Right. So can you see why we get along? So here's what happened. So I live in Southern California, like I said, and I'm an active angel investor, and I'm getting emails from different funds and syndicates and so forth. So there's a famous U.S. investor. How many of you have heard of Jason Calacanis? He's an angel investor. Okay. So Jason, I'm on Jason's syndicate, right? So I'm an investor who invests in deals, some of the deals I like that they bring. And I'm an LP in one of their funds. So anyway, so I get deal flow from them regularly, as angel investors do. And I saw this one, and I saw this is interesting because we can talk a lot about the diversity and the things that we want to build teams and empower employees, and that's all great, but that's, the investment comes down to the dollars, right? And what I saw immediately with this company, they basically manage stock options plans and capitalization tables. And these are problems that I face every day as an investor, and previously as a founder. Maintaining a cap table is a pain in the ass. How many of you know what a cap table is? Capitalization table? Okay, all right. So I won't go into that in any great depth, but in case you don't know, it's the line where you track all the investors in your company. And if you've been around for a while...
Who owns what, basically?
Yeah, who owns what, thank you, right. So managing that's a pain, and you might have to pay your lawyers a bunch to even do it for you, and they might not even do it right, because it's very complex, especially as you get larger. So these guys took all the pain out of that. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I looked a little closer, and I was like, oh, they're in Brisbane. How am I going to invest in Australia, right? That's a pain. So just so you know, American investors, we have difficulty investing in non-U.S. companies because basically the U.S. government is very grabby. Even if you live in the States, or even if you live outside the States or you make money outside the States, they still tax you as though you were living in America. And there's also some significant tax breaks for investors in America that we don't get if we invest in another country. So we can go into that in more detail if anybody wants to chat afterwards. But it's hard to do. But the syndicate had packaged these guys as a U.S. company. So maybe just talk about that for a second. How did you guys go from being a Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast company to being available to me in America?
Yeah, actually, our headquarters is in the Gold Coast. Now we can have employees and I guess customers all around the world. But the Gold Coast and Palm Beach is a small town, so there's really big ambitions from a small town and proving to the world that you can do it from there. So I guess the first journey was just to kind of get to the startup scene in Brisbane, then Sydney, then Melbourne, and then looking further outside. And it's good when you've seen the world and been to different places, then you've seen how the pace is at different other places than Australia. For example, I came with looking for someone that could move really, really fast, already with that mindset, thinking that was really important. I think with Jason Calacanis, it was certainly a bit of luck, and we were doing the normal fundraising, talking with a lot of VCs in Australia. It was really slow process, month after month. It felt like we were dancing around, and like, but look at us, we're amazing, we're going to do this thing, right? And not really convincing. And then through Twitter, Jason Calacanis and his team were looking for something like the problem we were solving around the equity management, and particularly looking outside of the US as well. And we already had quite a good penetration around angel investors. So there was 2 of the prominent angel investors in Australia that were saying, hey, I have 12 companies on K. How many do you have? I have 14. And he was kind of following that. And then we had good advisors that were connected in the US that knew Jason Calacanis. So we were kind of doing some backlinking and all of that. And we managed to, just with good bullet points and a bit of introductions to get to pitch for him. And basically...
It moved really quickly, right?
So 3 months, not getting anywhere, slow. We will get there, but it was just really slow. Within 15 minutes, he was like, I want to invest 1 million. No, make that 2 million. So that
Boom.
was just...
Welcome to Silicon Valley.
I was like, come on, Australian investors, this is it, we're here. I want to see this happen here. So now it comes these UN investors. But of course, we were excited about that. And we had, global ambitions. So this would really help us on a trajectory. After that, the the Australian investors were like, come on, we want in as well. So the game changes really fast, right?
So a lot of FOMO, right? They're all fearing they were going to miss out. The new unicorn, hopefully. So that's gone pretty well. So they've raised some money. And that's what led to then me getting an email, because once Calacanis, and he has a series of funds called Launch, where I'm an LP, and then there also has the Syndicate, which I joined years ago through AngelList. So if you're in my seat, and what I'm trying to do here is show you both sides of the table, right? Which I don't hear this very often, the dialogue, which is why I thought it would be fun to share. Hopefully you think it is. So I started getting these emails about this company, and it's like, okay, and they had packaged them into a Delaware C corporation. So that's a U.S. legal structure that means basically it's under standardized U.S. law. It's the standard for investing in the United States for any sort of venture capital high growth company is a C corp based in the U.S. state of Delaware. Every state in America has different regulations, so you have to be careful which state you pick. And the Delaware C corp is the standard now. And so you guys, they call it flipped up, right?
Yeah. We flipped up. It took 6 months, extremely painful, even though we have, I would say, really, really smart lawyers on our team. So definitely some learnings there, how painful that can be.
So they became available to us, and long story short, so I put some money in and got acquainted, and then they started thinking about coming to the States. Well, we'll get that. We got a long story here. So let's talk about the decision to expand, right? You must have done some analysis before you even thought about trying to raise money in the States, because that's not the obvious thing, right? You could go anywhere, or you could just stay here in Australia. Canva alone shows, right, that you can do plenty well, or Atlassian, you do nicely here. What else can you do? So why did you guys look at the United States as your market to go to?
Yeah, there was definitely, it's a learning process. And just to talk about, like, one of the most important things with building a startup is the pace of learning. So you just want to go, experiment. You have to learn, right? And in the beginning, you don't have any data. So it's really looking for signals and talking with your customers. So we had to go through that and figuring out how do we accelerate our learnings. But still, every single day, we're doing that with our product and all of that. We had global ambitions always. I had been quite inspired by the technology around blockchain that really could connect investors overseas, and I saw the desire for ownership more than the FOMO and all of that. Desire for ownership, desire for liquidity, felt the pain of not having access to private equity, felt the pain of setting up an option pool and giving ownership to employees and seeing a business grow, and these people that were employees that were contributing as much as me and I had equity were not going to get any part of the cake. So I felt all that pain. So knew we wanted to do this around ownership for the team and do it global. And we already were kind of, before we got just Calacanis, we already had a kind of global platform, but you really need to kind of focus, at least with our product, that needs to be very localized. We need to be very focused when we go to the different places. There's the product itself that needs to be localized for each place. There's the copy. We have legal contracts that needs to be modified and all of that. So in the beginning, we went way too wide. So we're just like, yeah, we're in every country. That's awesome. Please come, customers.
So here's the takeaway. We were talking about this at dinner last night. So what?
This is definitely something seen in the backlight. I wish you just did a lot faster. So we went to a lot of countries, then we figured out that's not going to work. So as we're building a global equity standard, we need to look at the tech hubs. We analyze the Commonwealth countries because they have very similar rules around equity, similar ways to set up an option pool, all of those things. So we're looking at, well, how do we bridge the US that is really mature market leading on how to use the standard contracts around equity. London, of course, is a tech center, fintech center in the world, and then Singapore, which kind of covers the Southeast Asia. So we want to build the equity standard around those. So we went, okay, let's do the US and Singapore, and sending some people to Singapore, and again, way too spread thin. So then we went to the US, and then eventually we actually landed on 2 cities in the US, LA and Denver, where we saw really great potential for our product to come in. I guess as part of that, it's a very competitive market for us. There's a very dominant player there called Kata, very successful, huge startup. So we need to be really smart on how we position ourselves against them. There's a lot of fear along from investors. Hey, you're going up against these big competitors, which there's both good and bad things with that. And again, that's down to the learning. How do you kind of differentiate yourself from them? So in the end, we landed on 2 cities going from the whole world. Maybe we should have done that right from the beginning.
So LA and Denver. So they looked at the West Coast. So why did you pick those 2 cities?
Well, we really found a kind of emerging, accelerating startup community that I think we're like learning a lot from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is what everybody knows, so there's a lot of focus on that. There's less focus on these two places, and we found that our competitors are not so prominent there at all. So there's really space for us to kind of kickstart there. There's great people like you that are really trying to not only grow the startup ecosystem there, but do that on a global level. So going cross-border and bring that diversity to the table, where Silicon Valley, it's maybe very much an ecosystem, go. And I think there was just better opportunity for us to be aligned with great people like you.
So part of that is that there's less competition. The states are so big that by trying to go across the whole country, they just didn't have the resources, right? It was just way too expensive, right? So maybe you can talk about expense management and some of the things that you've done and learned, sharing some of your learnings with how you can build a company in America when you're based thousands of miles away on a startup budget.
Absolutely, and this is one of the things I think for founders is really important. You need to have the confidence and the belief in yourself to keep going, even when the numbers are not there, or when you're being told things like, it's going to cost millions and millions of dollars, you have super funded startups against you, you can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And the last 12 months, we've had exponential growth with a flat spend. I'm very proud of that. And
exponential growth with a flat spend. He told me that at dinner last night. I'm an investor in the company. I hadn't even tracked on. I was like, wow, that is hard to do. Right, that's right.
It's really up to the incredible team. I have an amazing CPO, Chief Product Officer, in the room as well. Phenomenal. Bringing that expertise to accelerate that, to really understand. We were hacking a Frankenstein product together before we got Nick in, and we have another amazing.
Well, that's a good point. Nothing is perfect, right? So once people get on stage, it all sounds like it's perfect and it was all planned. But this is a startup. This is real life. It was a barrel full of snakes, right, a few years ago, right? And they pivoted a bunch of times. That's another story, but it wasn't easy.
And actually, we were kind of doing a pre-Series A last year, in the beginning of the year, and the whole market crashed. And we had, big VCs in Australia that really, really wanted to invest in us, but we were kind of burning too much money, and we kind of knew it. So we didn't get that bigger portion of money. And it was the best thing that could ever happen to Cake, really. So we managed to kind of do a bridge round and had a lot less money. And we just got to do the best with this. And we had to cut down a bit on the go-to-market team and all of that. But since we cut that down, we started accelerating faster than we'd ever done before. And we just turned the penny all the time to get more out of it, which is amazing to see what a small team can do. And it just reinforces that belief that a motivated team, you can really be smart in how you build the product, how you scale, how you use kind of good ideas like product-led growth to try and optimize. Of course, always finding out what it looks like for your company.
One of the things they've done, which I think was interesting, and I'm biased here, but they picked a couple key cities, right? So they didn't spread their marketing spend and their personnel too thin across a huge market of the States. They picked time zones that were at least a little closer, I guess. But they also identified key people that they're calling ambassadors, and I'm one of them. So you can talk a little bit about that maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things to overcome is, or understand, so again, we were told you got to have a founder or someone high in the company that's really connected to the mission and really have the energy and the drive. Should be in moving to the place that you're going to expand in. And so I think there's some truth in that. Again, it depends on each of the problems you're solving and what type of customers you have and all of that. But in our case, we were very fortunate to have a co-founder, Jason Atkins, my co-founder, that is really good at selling and very positive, lots of energy, really good at connecting with people and finding the people that matter and sharing the mission of Cake. So he's basically been going over there every second month to the US. And part of that is also a really important learning for us that for a product like Cake that relies on a lot of trust among the users, even though the founders understand the problem. They're quite mature.
He's talking about trust there because he's managing the stock options in the cap table. This is internal financial, important data.
And all the communication, so that those relationships between you and your investors and all of that, where you want to come off as professional, and it can be difficult for founders to understand all this jargon, and investors, they speak this every single day, right? So let's change this, make it a lot easier, and of course your employees. So yeah, sending Jason over there all the time, but also like some hacks we had to do, like he put his address in the US, phone numbers on LinkedIn, all of these things to really, so the US founders can, trust us and we understand the market there. Of course, you have to adjust the product and the contracts and the language, understand, the table stake features like 409A evaluations are super important to have over there. So the functionality needs to be there, but how you communicate, how you understand their language and all of that, which is, standard for all startup founders. What's your customer profile? But that is different for each region. And another thing that, if you go too wide, and we're building a SaaS startup, so, as we starting to be able to replicate everything that we're doing, we rely more and more on metrics and data-driven decisions. And as soon as you start going in different regions, that complexity just grows like crazy. So if you want to be data-driven, you have to be really focused. And again, sometimes just really slow down, interview your customers. That was another learning we had.
Talk about that for a second.
We did that a bit, and again, it was so important to have people like you, where there's already a lot of love from the founders, so we could easily get access to them, and so we had a bunch of interviews. Nick and I did quite a few. We should really have doubled down on that, but at least we did that. We should just ship over the product managers to the US, and marketing. Get there, talk with people directly in the same room, see what they're excited about. It's hard to do that through Hangout or Zoom.
Yeah. So a lot of their strategy was really about partnering. So they found individuals who are already embedded in those communities, people like me. Again, this is a personal story, right? So I'm there in Southern California. I've been there for decades. I know a lot of people. I'm involved in a lot of the organizations. I know lots of the founders because I run workshops and accelerators and things like that all the time. So. And I happen to be an investor in this case, but you wouldn't have to be an investor. This is what we're trying to do is give you guys suggestions that maybe are useful for you. So if you're not in country or even in town, find those people, and they've really developed a partnership strategy, right? So they come to people like me and try to do partners, and then we can offer discounts to our constituents essentially, and it starts to look like they're local because they have me as the local face, and people know me, right? And that seems to have been very cost effective for you guys. And then they also learned a lot. So the customer interviews you were talking about, like, we need to meet some local founders. So they're adapting their product based on, they sent me an email, and I said, I'll send an email to my friends, and I don't know, half a dozen or 10 of founders that I know, then got on Zooms with them, and they adjusted the product according to that local feedback. And that's something you can do without flying over there. As he said, it's better in person, but if we did that for basically no cost, right? And you guys got a bunch of valuable customer feedback.
No, absolutely, and you sometimes it's that mix of when you have data, of course you can start looking at that, but early on getting those signals. Another thing that was really critical for us to learn, and we're still adjusting things, is just, since it's a very mature market over there and there's competitors, the founders make very fast decisions, so speed is of the essence. We can't take days to respond, not even in the weekends, right?
We talked about this at dinner last night about the customers. They adapted their customer service scheme. Yeah,
it's not enough to have a better product that I truly believe we have, that is simpler and faster than the other products and works globally, very standardized, very smart. We have to understand how that product is being delivered, of course, on the whole go-to-market. How do you create the awareness? How do you create the brand, the trust, and all of that, which comes through partners. We run a lot of events and all of that where we build the trust. So when they have the need, the urgency, the job to be done, they already kind of know about Cake, and then they might, compare with 3 others at the time, and we just need to be on top of them too. It's ultimately, how do you give them value as fast as possible and see that this is the right choice for your startup.
Yeah, the insight that I pulled out of that from our discussion last night was, then in a market that is so crowded, most people say don't do that, don't go there because it's so crowded. Well, that makes sense, but the glass half full approach is, wow, it's so crowded. Obviously there's a market opportunity, but it also means that the education has been done for you by competitors, right? So that it's been established that there's a need for a product like this, and customers are somewhat pre-trained to go looking for stuff. So you benefit by that, but then you've got to be ready to respond quickly because they've already shopped around and they've got 3 or 4 competing bids potentially on this service, and your customer service people better be online and not worried about the time zone difference, to close that sale, right?
And I just want to add to that, because this is personal to me, this as part of the founder journey, around the belief you got to have, the kind of unique way you see the world, and continuing that, because again, I was told just copy the features, don't reinvent the wheel, but when you have competitors, it's ultra important that you're forced to position yourselves really, really well. So to choose your unique insights. What is your unique passion? What is your unique things you have from your history that you see the world differently, and what's the data you can constantly add to that? That's your unique strength. And when you double down on that, you're always going to be 5 steps ahead, as well as, just having an incredible team that is aligned around that mission. Nobody can replicate that. They can replicate your features, they can replicate your copy, but you're just way, way ahead, right? And as part of having an incredible product engine that just constantly learns, go, edge of the seat all the time, urgency.
Yeah. So that go-to-market strategy, is it starting to make sense how they did this? Is this useful? Interesting? Are we on the right track? We got some heading. Everybody's awake? Okay. So the tactical steps then, you set up kind of a fake presence in the States. They partnered with people like me who are actually in the States. They'd raised some money from the States. They're starting to look like an American company. And the co-founder spends probably a third of his time in the States now, doing lots of partnership events and community outreach and sponsoring events and speaking and so forth. So building a brand. But again, just in 2 targeted markets. So they're husbanding their capital, which as an investor I'm happy to see, right? It will help them raise money in the future because they're really demonstrating capital efficiency, which is what investors are really looking for these days, capital efficiency.
And to add to that, I think what we're building is, how do we constantly accelerate bringing more impact in the world, positive impact, which is the purpose of what we're doing, right? And part of that is expanding into new markets, which we're doing with the US. And as we are trying to replicate what we did in Australia, which was, boots on the ground, getting all the community, 200 partners that are referring to K. How do we do that in a compressed time in the US? So we're building kind of a go-to-market playbook. And the way we see that in a simplified, you might be helpful with a slide, but we have kind of like an ignite phase where you don't have any data. So you got to talk with a lot of people and got to be really smart in listening to the right signals, pick them up, adopt the product and all of that. As you're starting to get more confidence on the signals, then you go into kind of what we call a growth phase, where you can start having some numbers. One of the really important things, and especially when you're taking money to accelerate your mission from investors, is to build that validation. And for our case, in regards to the SaaS business, we use metrics for that. So one of the most important things is how much does it cost to acquire a customer in this new region. So we had pretty good data on that in Australia, really, really good CAC and a CAC payback. So how long time does it take to pay back the cost of acquiring a customer, and you look at the lifetime value of that to make sure there's a good proportion there. So one of the things you can track then in the growth phase is to see what's the CAC and what's the CAC payback, and start having some targets there. You can't start with that, and it was a big learning. I think we did really quite good, right, in the beginning, in kind of managing expectations on how much growth we could create from the US from the get-go. So, and this is a big challenge with a team that is, where it's a lot of hands-on work every day and at the end of the month to hit those numbers. So we have to grow, but we're going into a new market, and you gotta sometimes go slow to grow fast there. So, managing expectations towards yourself and your team so you don't burn them out, to the outside as well on what growth can actually be achieved. I'm talking about, in our case, monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue growth, where you just want to have that consistent growth every day, 10% faster compounding. It's tough to run 10% faster month over month.
And Kim's got a lot of great theories. This is not his first startup. We didn't get too much into his background, but he's got quite a... Well, basically, I was kidding him last night. He needs to write a book. He's got management theory. So if you're interested in how to grow a team and build a good culture, you talk to him afterwards. He'll give you a good download. Okay, so 2 more questions, and then we're going to take some questions from you folks if you'd like. They'll be be a microphone available in the back of the room. So one of the things I know you benefited from was partners and other resources, incubators, training programs, and I think those would be available in many jurisdictions, not just here in Australia, but a lot of places have government-sponsored trade missions and training programs. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how that helped you expand?
No, absolutely, and it's partly. So we've gotten really good support from Austrade in Australia, both looking at the UK market, but also connections in the US and advice and all of those things. And it can be super helpful. Always be careful with advice. Take it as a signal, but look what's right for you. Don't trust anything blindly. You have to find what you're good at in that. And there's a lot of advice out there. But also when you have I think Trade Investment Queensland as well has supported as well. QIC, the new investment community in Australia in Queensland is supporting us. So that builds, of course, confidence in that we're doing something right when you have these government bodies. So really, when you have access to that, leverage that to actually. There's great network connections there. You can leverage your brand in credibility, which is important for something like cap table management.
And I would think a lot of your own government organizations would have things like that as well. So if you're thinking about international expansion, don't be shy. There are a lot of things in the works. In fact, it's one of the great things about this conference that we're here at today is there are ministers from all over the world working on this, right? So even if your jurisdiction doesn't have an incubator or a trade mission program or training, they're probably working on one. And if they're not, you could probably ask, and they might start working on it. Everybody knows or is interested in startups these days, so it's an opportunity to be driven by mission-driven entrepreneurs. Okay, last question, and until some other folks, maybe raise some hands. How many do people have questions? We can keep talking. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm not sure how we're going to arrange all that. That's great, though. Okay, so last question. So you're a SaaS startup, right? So this is the classic Silicon Valley darling, right? Maybe it's easier for them. But what if you are a consumer packaged goods company, or you're an aerospace hard tech company, or some kind of deep tech thing? AI, right? Now, well, AI is probably easier these days. But what if you're not what you guys are, in the same way that you're not the white guys, with the pedigree that we are. For the next generation of people that follow you, you have some tips, or do you think it's possible for those other types of folks and companies to expand to the United States in a way similar to you?
No, absolutely, and we've done that in another business of mine that was selling hardware, so bracelets called Bond Touch, that kind of really, really grew over there. It's definitely different challenges, and that's where it's wonderful with software, and if you know that and think product thinking, you can really scale through that. But other things takes bigger investment. But I mean, my advice there is always, you got to get under the skin of the customer. Don't build too much, hack as much as you possibly can. It's easier with software because you have like spreadsheets in the background and just a website, and that's your product, And that's harder with a wearable where you got to have that initial investment. But definitely, I see danger if people are like over-indexing on building technology first, and I'm from technology. I've done this many, many times, the whole blockchain space, trying to squeeze technology. And now we see the same with AI first. Yeah, it's exciting, but you just gotta, technology, and it's all the same, whether it's called AI or blockchain or quantum computing or whatever. That's just technology. Get the problem right. Fall in love with the problem, never the technology, right? And then really validate where it's going to accelerate what you're doing, where it's going to scale. But some things will need more investment upfront. But spend 80% of your time to constantly understand your customers and their problems.
That's what I was going to say. Customer, right? That's really the mantra, and that's what investors want to hear too. Like, we love that you have a great idea and a world-spanning vision and a huge addressable market. But if you haven't talked to any customers and you're the only one that seems to appreciate your idea, then we're not going to be interested. That's a whole other panel.
and even for hardware, just as one example, we really leveraged Amazon with the Bond Touch to accelerate growing the market in the US. So there's a lot of technology infrastructure set up around you. So you want to leverage that.
Yeah, that's a great one. I don't know if it's available here. You're talking about AWS Accelerate? Yeah, so Amazon Web Services in the States anyway, many organizations we can give grants of up to $25,000 of Amazon credits, and that can go a long way for a startup. I've helped arrange that many times for companies I'm involved with, so that might be helpful to any of you. Okay, so let's take some questions if you'd like. I think there's a microphone in the back. Can we, here comes the gentleman with the microphone. I guess we'll just start from the back there. Raise your hand, somebody in the back, and you can Just go. You can pick somebody. There you go. All right. And the lucky winner is just let us know what your name and where you're from first.
Hi,
Can you
everyone.
stand up?
Just testing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jack. I'm from New Zealand.
Good day.
Just a question around the cities. So you've said LA and Denver are sort of the first two that you're hitting. What are you sort of considering in terms of the next steps? Are you going to sort of go city by city by city, or are you going to do another 5, another 10, 100? Like, what's sort of the approach on that next step? And what are
That's
you
a great
for?
question. I forgot to ask you that myself. What's next?
That's a really good question. I don't think we have the perfect answer for that yet. I think we're doing really well there. So just to say in regards to the cities, that's kind of like a community-led growth that we're using as part of the whole product-led growth, and how we think about building the awareness and all of that, boots on the ground. But in parallel to that, we have 7 other kind of marketing channels as part of the go-to-market. So, we really want to get to that kind of organic growth. You don't have that in the beginning, that build that big awareness, especially, with our target customers that are the very early startups that, don't really know the problem yet, and then they start facing it. So we want them to get to know about us before, and then when they encounter the problem, sometimes when they're racing and they're asked all these questions, then they know about Cake. So I think we can do a lot just from those 2 cities, but on the other channels, we are more kind of attacking all of US. So it's a really good base. And I think, we'll start leveraging connections that are both in LA and San Francisco and all of that. We are kind of building a matrix to try and understand what's the best approach, but it's really, I think, very, very iterative and doubling down on what's working always, and then identifying when there's a problem. That's typically an opportunity in disguise. So I think we're going to keep doing that quite a bit more, and just as we're seeing the CAC is coming down, the CAC payback is coming down steadily in the US, which is a strong confidence for us that it's working there. The growth of customers are coming there. We could manage the churn well, and to understand.
And I'll chime in on that as well, because we were talking last night, and they have 7 different marketing channels that they've identified, and that includes paid ads and SEO and content marketing, all that kind of stuff. But I'm part of the community. I'm an investor, but I'm also an ambassador for the company. And in that case, I'm part of their community outreach effort, like we've talked about. And what we were talking about last night is you do enough of that. Then at some point the founders actually are not the first strike anymore, or even the partners. It's the employees, at least for this product, right? The employees are like, I want more clarity in my stock options. I know when I was an employee, I could never figure out what my options were worth, right? And every employee in the world wants to know how this works. Like, what is this stuff worth, right? It's very hidden. So part of their thing is to do enough kind of top-level marketing and branding that the rank-and-file employees start using, and then they go and request it from the founders. And I think that's kind of interesting. And then also the other part, with me being an ambassador, part of my job, I'm a biz dev guy by training, and I'm introducing them to larger scale folks so that they get involved with national and global organizations. Like this appearance here is a bit of biz dev, right? So meeting everybody from around the world. Well, some of you are probably going to end up being users of Cake Equity, right? And maybe some of you are part of organizations that can use it. And that kind of thing will also percolate across. And perhaps they won't need to go city by city anymore, because they're in the bloodstream of the United States. That's kind of our shared vision.
Yeah, and we want to go to Europe and all of that as we're building a standard that works globally. Eventually, equity should be just like really good technology. It becomes invisible. You just get the power of it, which is really that motivation of the team, and of course getting to liquidity in a good way along the way.
Right. All right. Nice question. Where'd the microphone go? Oh, here he comes.
So Kieran, Sunshine Coast. Quick question. You mentioned at one point you had a very high burn rate. How long would you suggest, if you're able to be self-funded as opposed to, I guess, going and looking for somebody to bring in some money?
It's a very big question. Personally, deep in me, I love bootstrapping, so, but I think the most important is to kind of own your own narrative in that, to see money as an acceleration thing, and own your own story. Investors can have a tendency, they have their problems and their priorities, which is, to grow the value of their portfolio. And then the milestones for that is typically every single raise. So once you kind of invite VCs to your cap table, and you kind of go into a bit of their journey, And I think it's good to, and I think Cake is part of changing that narrative to really give a bit more power back to the startup teams, both the founders and the employees, to really own their own journey and own their own mission. And part of that is rephrasing, well, money is, there's Series A, there's all this glamorous stuff, right? The real heroes is really the startup team, right? Everybody else are supporters and advisors and cheerleaders and sometimes come in with money. But see money as, what is it going to accelerate? And is that the best, right? And what does it come with? Do you have to do a board meeting all the time and spend a lot of time with that? It can be, it is a challenge to raise money. Often, the market will go up and down, and you have to learn so much as a founder. So I think it's really good to learn about it, but the more you can bootstrap, the better. Like when we had less money and we grew faster, it changed a little bit the idea that sometimes comes from investors. I hope I'm not criticizing too much, but money will just automatically accelerate things, but you want to understand from yourself, have that confidence, is this money going to accelerate, I think, what success should be for startups, which is the mission, creating real value in the equity and having an awesome journey along the way where people don't burn out, right? So important.
Putting on my investor hat, the standard answer is basically, you need to start the fire. We're not going to give you money to fuel it, right? So get it rolling. That's a little pat, obviously, and it's different for different situations, but go as long as you can. You don't want to get married, before you got to date a long time if you can, right? This is really more like dating. So, in fact, if you can, never raise money, right? And at the end, you're already a hugely profitable company. You'll raise at a much better multiple, and we'll be annoyed as investors, but as your friends, good on you, right? I mean, that's really the goal here. The goal is not to raise money. That's not a thing. The media makes it sound like raising money is the end. That's only the beginning, man. So it's tough. Another thought is that's the kind of discussion that we have a lot in any environment like this. Some of my books are about that. I'm working on a new book about that. But we also have a LinkedIn group that I set up recently to try to continue these kind of discussions. So if you go to startupcouncil.org, I took down the thing. Anyway, startupcouncil.org, or we've got cards up here. But I'm trying to facilitate this kind of conversation because this kind of education, we're happy to share it. And the details of the blocking and tackling as a founder are tough, and there's no right answer, right? Especially, this is funny, and no offense to any of you who are engineers, but a lot of people are mathematicians, but they tend to see things in black and white. It's this or it's that. Well, it's not. In investing, it's always squishy, right? So you're never quite sure what the answer is. You're never going to get a really straight answer from investors about what's wrong with your product. So you got to keep digging and keep going. Can we get the microphone back up here? I see my friend over here has a question. Thank you.
It's amazing to hear that from investor, really.
I'm the only one that says that, I think. That's my next book is going to be like the truth, right? Of like, this is, Anyway, that's a whole other deal. All right, we can leave the microphone up here. Thank you. Yeah.
My name is Nujor. I run Bangladesh Angels, and a lot of our investee companies are Delaware Seas. I'm curious, I think on two fronts. So with regards to the community, I'm guessing not all of your community ambassadors were angel investors. So what are ways in which you incentivize them, or some hacks to kind of grow the community? And second, as you kind of move cross-border, I'd imagine a lot of that's kind of melding cultures, remote management. What were some concrete ways in which you kind of build a culture across borders?
Sharp guy, right? And you're right. Just the first point. It's unusual. That's why we did this panel, because I'm a founder, an investor, and an ambassador. We thought it was kind of a unique situation. I hope it's useful. So thank you for having us. And you can pass the mic to her. But go ahead, Kim, answer his question.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is investors, right? But we have a lot of partners. So accelerators and incubators is really where we kind of create the awareness about Cake at an early stage. And we can run a lot of events together with them and bring out the learnings about equity to really upskill the market. And I think, that's super important. How to get more diversity, I think it's just spreading the love of Cake everywhere in the world, and connecting with a lot of people. So I think the community, it always has to be a win-win. So how can we understand the problems that an accelerator are facing with their portfolio companies, and they need them to be upskilled in equity. So there's a lot of advantages for them. I think we can even lift their brand as well as we grow more and more, which is another thing. Investors, are part of a bigger journey. So I think it's really important that they see that, Cake is going to be very, very big in the future. So,
and tactically speaking, they do have ambassadors who are just regular folks who happen, in a lot of cases, are Australian, friends of friends of friends who are in LA, and they're helpful. And you got to be creative and bootstrapping, right? And not paying a lot. We're going to run out of time here. So how about you?
Hi, first of all, thank you so much, Scott and Kim, for being here. My name's Tao. I'm from Detox, a health tech community helping the next generation scroll better online. So my question is, I've created 5 mini MVPs in Melbourne and 1 New York, and I would like to see what you would recommend. Do we keep scaling in Melbourne, or is it something that we can actually look at potentially working in the US? Whether it's starting to build a community, finding ambassadors and building on those partnerships in the US, or do we just keep going in Melbourne?
I mean, I don't know your business well enough to give you full advice, but again, going back to that model we had where we ignite in a new market, so our go-to-market playbook, and then when we're seeing that's working, we get in the confidence, then we go into the growth phase. After the growth phase, we go into what we call the maintain or sustain phase, which we are in Australia now. So if we are to grow our revenue in Australia with the market, it is only what it is. There's 5,000 startups here. It's a small market for us, and we really want to help the startups. So we would have to go upstream if we were to really grow the money. So we want to go in a new region, and I think those are the thoughts that we have that might apply to your case. But then see, can you get to that sustain phase? For us, that means having community managers that goes in and continues the job that the founder has done by igniting and growing, that are aligned enough around your mission, and they can speak enough and with the passion that you have, right? So it's looking at, can you sustain it with the team that you have, and then expand into new markets, and yeah.
And I would add, as an investor, growth. Whether it's in Melbourne, whether it's in Florida, anywhere, any of you who are looking for attention from investors these days, good ideas aren't enough, even traction's not enough. It's got to be compounding growth. There's so many startups in the world, we're inundated, right? We just see so many business plans every day. What we want to see is hockey sticks. And it sounds unfair, but that's the fact. Because the money, I'm an angel investor. Like, if I write you a check, it's my personal money, right? So I'm not doing this based on some big thesis. It's because I want to make money, right? And I hope it does good for the world. I really do. I really do. But first, I got to make the money. And the most obvious way to make money is if you're taking off in a good way, because you're receiving validation from customers. And that's, so if your customer sweet spot is here in Melbourne, then beat the shit out of Melbourne, right? And if it's not, then go where the customers are. It's all about the customers, I think. We need to move.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, consistent behavior. So proving to investors that you can execute, it's how you build trust. So always have that. Seeing if you can, again, as we talked about with Cake, replicate what you've been doing in Melbourne faster and cheaper in a new place.
Okay, so I think we're going to run out of time here. I hope this has been helpful. So I want to invite you to the after party. What? There's an after party? It's only 10 o'clock in the morning. No. The after party, of course, is going to be the next conference, right? Or online. So come join our LinkedIn group. Come join the newsletters that we're setting up at Startup Council. We're doing this for you. I don't have to do this. I want to help, right? And all my friends want to help. Most angel investors do it because they actually give a shit. And we like being around people who get things done. And that's us. That's you guys. We are a community, right? So I want to thank Jen and the Global Entrepreneurship Congress for having me here so that we can spread this message. And I want you to come and participate, right? We're doing this to help. So I run monthly startup office hours. They're free on Zoom. If you want to come and talk to me directly, fine, awesome. We run masterminds groups where we do smaller groups, alternate them in person in California or online, and we do 30 or 40 entrepreneurs show up, and it's $20, or it's free if you bring a question. So bring a question and we'll hash it out together, right? This is a team effort, right? I'm building an army, and I hope you'll join. We want to do this together. So sign up, and we'll keep in touch. LinkedIn or anywhere else, you can scan those. Did I cover all those? Pretty much. Oh, well, so if you have other events, like if you want me to come and speak and talk about this stuff, I'd love to do that. I'll be happy to help. Give me a call or send me an email. Email's the best. LinkedIn I can't keep up with, but we'd be happy to help. And Kim, what can Cake do for these folks?
Yeah, I think we're running a lot of events where you can learn about equity and make it a lot easier for you to communicate around it, both to your team and externally. Yeah, so please reach out. Cake has a freemium model, so it's free for up to 5 stakeholders. So please sign up and give us feedback on it. Let's help each other. Equity needs to be a lot simpler, so you can just focus on solving your big problem and make the world a better place.
And one more, I do this all day, but this is a new website we started, startupevents.org. As far as I know, it's the only one in the world. It's a calendar of educational and networking events for founders, but they're all and only virtual. So all of you can go to everything listed on this calendar. I couldn't find that, so I built it. I'm an entrepreneur, right? So if you're looking to learn about networking or AI or whatever it is, go sign up for that list. It's free. Or if you have an event you want to promote that's virtual, send it to us. We'll post it. That's what I'm doing, trying to build the flywheel for everybody, right? So I hope you had a good time today. I hope you have a great time. Please come say hi later if I see you in the hallways, or say hi on LinkedIn. We've got some cards over here if you want to grab them to check out our other services. And I want to thank Jonathan Ortmans and Callie Norman and Polly Succi and all the Global Entrepreneurship Congress folks for inviting us here. Thanks so much.